Hello again. So this will be the final episode of this mini-series around healthy boundaries, but it doesn't begin or end there. But let's first talk about the astrology update. Of course, we have Valentine's Day coming up on Saturday. Be mindful of what your plans are. We do not need any more Scorpio babies. But on Wednesday, we also have a full moon in Leo. Now, if you remember, I mentioned before about the new moon is always in the sign that the sun is currently in, so Aquarius, and the full moon is always in the opposite or the sister sign of that. So our full moon this Wednesday will be in the sign of Leo. Leo is a fire sign. It's represented by the lion. It's also represented by the strength card in tarot. But Leo represents courage, strength, authenticity, things like that. So this full moon being in Leo, so full moons are about releasing or letting things go. So for me, the full moon in Leo signifies letting go of any areas of your life where you feel scared or weak or disconnected from your purpose. There's not really anything special you need to do for a full moon. I have a few rituals that I enjoy doing myself. I like to make moon water, which is basically just putting water into some sort of vessel with a lid on it, and you place it outside. During the night, it absorbs the moon's energy, and then you bring it in the morning. You can drink it, you can use it for rituals, you can clean with it, whatever you want. But I would recommend journaling for this one, since this full moon, with it being in Leo, is letting go of the things that make us feel scared or weak, anything that's kind of really standing in our path. So if you've been feeling stuck, journaling would be one of my recommendations for this full moon. So Wednesday night, do that. Now, for why you're really here. This is the final episode of the Healthy Boundaries series. And it's just a small summary of this one thought on standards being our past, boundaries being our present, and expectations being our future. But they are so much more nuanced than that, and I will probably touch more on the topics in the future. But for the sake of sharing more of my thoughts and experiences and moving on from this topic and outside of boundaries, I want to wrap this up here. So let's get into it. To recap, standards are shaped by our past experiences. Boundaries exist in the present and protect our emotional, mental, and physical well-being. And expectations look toward the future for how we want the relationship to continue to function. When all three of these elements are clear to us, they can create confidence to build harmonious relationships that honor the best and highest good of everyone. When you know yourself to be worthy of healthy and aligned relationships, it becomes easier to spot when your relationships are out of alignment. So let's talk a little bit about how your sense of self-worth ties into this. Self-worth is something that I will discuss further into on a different topic in the future. But for the sake of this one, having a strong sense of self-worth is what will help you enforce your needs and protect your energy. And it helps you to demand respect for yourself because you know what you deserve and when people are taking advantage of your kindness. When you know your value, you naturally set higher standards for how you allow others and yourself to treat you. Negative self-talk is usually at a minimum. You're able to recognize that you are a perfectly flawed human being, and you appreciate your character and authenticity. If you don't respect yourself or show yourself kindness and honesty, you will settle for others who don't respect you or show you compassion or trust in return. We typically attract the relationships based on how we treat ourselves or how we view ourselves. So if you continuously tolerate disrespect, you will continue to be disrespected. When you recognize your worth, you won't feel guilty for saying no to things that don't align with your beliefs or values, and you'll be more mindful of your time and energy. Having a strong sense of self-worth helps you clarify what you want and need in your relationships, and it helps you form healthy and realistic expectations instead of feeling unfulfilled and expecting others to fill those parts of you that you aren't first trying to fill yourself. Now, this isn't to say that you shouldn't rely on others to add to your happiness and love, but it instead allows you to have a healthy sense of how they add value to your life. It's not up to your partner to make you happy. You are meant to find your own happiness and give your partner the opportunity to add to that. Having a strong sense of self-worth allows you to feel confident in surrounding yourself with people who inspire and respect you, instead of settling for relationships that are transactional or make you feel like you can't be authentic, which leads to feeling like you're too much and you hold yourself back. So I feel like this episode is synchronistic with the full moon in Leo this week. Once you have a positive sense of self-worth and self-awareness, creating and maintaining healthy standards, boundaries, and expectations is much easier to navigate. You can start with reflecting on your past and present relationships. What areas stick out to you for being positive and negative? What reasons are there that past relationships fell flat or ended? What currently keeps you in the relationships you have now? This is where journaling can come in handy, because it allows you to look back at your past relationships and your current ones, and can help you become more clear on your values and your needs. You may recognize that a relationship that seems to have ended out of nowhere really wasn't in alignment with your needs, or was rooted in an old belief that you no longer hold. Here are a few questions you can ask yourself, and I'll make sure I leave those in the description of this podcast. The first one, what qualities do I need in a relationship? Number 2, what behaviors will I not tolerate? And number 3, how do I want to be treated? Once you become more clear on your core values, you can begin to establish your non-negotiables. If you hold a core value of honesty, you will not tolerate manipulation or allow yourself to be gaslit when you confront someone about areas of dishonesty. Knowing exactly what you want helps you to communicate that to the other person so that there are no misunderstandings about your expectations. It becomes easier to recognize that we are all humans who make mistakes. Understand that perfection is unrealistic, but be clear in what you need. Your standards are for you, not about controlling others. Let people be who they are, but meet them where they're at. If you make it clear that you want open communication and the other person can't seem to offer that to you, then this is where you get to decide their involvement in your life. You aren't asking the other person to do something they are uncomfortable doing, or to change their own core values to appease you. When you begin to establish and enforce your boundaries, you may experience some pushback. People who once abused having unlimited access to your time and energy will now see you as being strict or cold. Responding and enforcing your boundaries will help them see that you respect yourself. Make sure that you stick to your I statements. I need to plan for changes in advance, so last-minute cancellations don't work for me, instead of, you never respect my time. It's important to make sure that you are taking accountability for allowing that unlimited access to your time and energy in the first place. Show yourself grace and forgiveness and ask for that from the other person. Healthy relationships will respect your vulnerability and the value you hold for yourself. Making sure that you hold other people accountable for their actions means that you should be willing and open to be held accountable as well. If you want your boundaries respected, then others' boundaries need to be respected as well. Don't be afraid to ask the other person what they need too. What do you need from me in this relationship, and how can we support each other? Work to compromise with each other. It's unrealistic to expect the other person to read your mind or predict what you need. But if you find yourself having the conversation multiple times about what you need, and the other person doesn't seem to be willing to meet that, then it's time to reassess what sort of involvement they have in your life. Here is where compromise can come into play. If you have an expectation of clear communication in your relationships, but you are working with someone who is healing from their own past wounds, where they were not welcomed lovingly to communicate freely, You can find compromise by having safe conversations or speaking about your own experiences to encourage that vulnerability and trust, and by giving them time and space to open up how they feel comfortable doing so. One of the hardest things is to recognize when to walk away. If your needs are continuously being disregarded, that's not compromise or learning, that's disrespect. Remember to not bend the rules for yourself. Have more respect for yourself and your values than you do fear of losing someone. People will choose to change for themselves, and your relationships will change as well. But you have to be willing to make the hard decision to choose yourself over your fear of loneliness, abandonment, or losing someone. We all crave intimate connections with others, and by creating and maintaining clear and healthy standards, boundaries, and expectations, you can create those close connections that are lasting and meaningful. Get clear on what standards you value the most and carry those into your relationships by setting boundaries. Enforce those boundaries with clear communication of your expectations so that the relationship can grow now and in the future. Remember to be realistic and open and willing to compromise, but also know when to walk away when you need to. Know your worth and honor your needs without guilt. Okay, that wraps everything up nicely. As always, if you have any questions or thoughts or ideas for future topics, please feel free to reach out to me in the comments or on social media. This topic of boundaries was requested from a very good friend of mine, and it just sort of blossomed into this little mini-series. So I love when I get asked to talk about specific things. It helps keep me on track of what I'm talking about without squirreling into 100 different ways that this relates to that, or making short stories long. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next week.